It's absurd. But you have this battle within, right? Now, I would say, and anybody can see even modern day Christianity, and most of the doctrinal points of modern day Christianity, it has elements of quote, both. Because these are not, the scholars like to divide these. I'm going to say these are two totally different sources. But you can have a very loving God who also goes, fights in wars, and kills people. You can have a loving father, right, who protects the young, who protects his family, protects his civilization, but then goes out and fights a war and kills bad guys. In fact, most of our military does that.
That's right.
Right?
God bless him.
So the scholars like to say, no, these are two totally different worlds, totally different groups that are saying, God is vengeful. He's a separate. That's a totally different vision of God. And then the God is all love is another, right? And these are fighting factions. But really, you look at just the strong notion of a father in Judeo-Christian culture. It is that notion of the loving shepherd, the loving father who will die on the cross for his children, right? But at the same time, that will fight wickedness, that will destroy evil. Right? These things don't have to be mutually exclusive. You can still be a strong, loving, you can be still a loving person, but yet stand up and destroy evil. You could do both. You see what I'm saying? They're not mutually exclusive like the quote, scholars want you to believe. Right? If you're around Father, yes, Father talks a lot about true love and stuff like that, but he is like a military leader when you're around him. He's like intense nuclear bomb. You understand? It's like being next to a nuclear reactor. Right? And anybody who's been near Father, you know. There's a problem with the kids or young people who have never experienced Father. You've seen him only from afar, and you've only read his words, and you're only listening to words about love and shedding tears. No, if you're around Father, it's a totally different thing. You get the context. Because he will push you, he will brutalize you. Brutalize you. It's for your good, but he'll brutalize you. He's brutal. He's not easy to be around. And it's in that context where he talks about love. Right? He's not some hippie, up there, or some kind of Dalai Lama up there sitting there. Oh, yes, yeah. He is hot like fire. You understand? He's like Holy Ghost fire. He's not a weak man. He's an alpha male of alpha males. If you thought generals were alpha males, you have not been around Father, okay? I was around the generals in Korea. We were around the generals in the Department of State. They're so, actually, what the military guys say, many of the generals are more like politicians. They're much more feminine, actually. And we were around those generals, and it's like, man, yeah, they order the deaths of ISIS and all this kind of stuff. But they're more like politicians. They're like, they're at those, politician parties and, the little, cocktail and the little whatever, talking with the super class. They're doing that kind of stuff a lot. They're not like the assaulters or the special forces guys who have to kick down doors and rough up and kill bad guys. Right? They just make the orders from behind. Right? Father was not like one of those generals. You see those generals, the high-level military guys, they're just like very polite. They almost like you would be meeting like a senator or a congressman. It feels like you're just wearing a military suit. That's not how Father was. He was so intense, so incredibly filled with fire. Okay. Most of these young people wouldn't last around Father at all. They wouldn't last. You'd all be burnt to a crisp. You'd be potato chips, Tostitos with salsa. You would not survive. They would be burnt up so fast. Because young people, they just don't understand. Now, I think these kids are a little different. Because they're training all this, they're doing harder training. So I think they would have, but the normal child, the normal, quote, blessed child, who didn't go through like harder training, they would see Father be like, oh, why is he so angry? Why is he shouting all the time? They grew up in liberal areas. These kids, the toughest teacher that they met is their biology teacher or something like that. You know what I'm saying? That's just ridiculous. You understand? Father went through wars. He went through surviving the North Korean death camps. This is not a weak man. He's an alpha male. Now, in that context of brutalizing you and pushing you and making you, do all the things that you don't want to do and hate, etc. Now, in that context, yes, he'll talk about love and weeping about God and crying. But it's in the context of being brutalized. Okay? The whole lifestyle is so intense. It's so rugged. It's like military. That's the closest thing I think people can explain it to. It's so regimented and it's so intense because it's a center of the spiritual warfare. So, for example, Father used to give praise to the women who were very strong. Like I remember this one fat lady, I can't remember her name, but she was called General Kim. I can't remember. I don't know if she was a new member or something. She was this fat Korean lady, and she had this booming voice. And Father would just listen to her speak, and he'd be laughing. That's a general. She's a lady general, whatever the case would be, right? And then one of the biggest blessings he gave to the queen, right? He said, because her family got a prophecy from Father. When her mommy married her daddy, her mom was tall and her dad was short. So the mom was all angry because she didn't want to marry a man who was smaller than her. It's like a very important, critical, providential fact, right? If your husband is shorter than you, a couple centimeters shorter than you, then all is lost apparently to this woman. Okay, but so that happened, and Father said, if you marry this man as Father has directed you to do, you will be blessed with a general in your family. Okay, now. They had children, and they had girl, boy, but the boy was handicapped. To this day, he's almost 40 years old, but he has the mental capacity of a 5-year-old. Right? So he was brain damaged at birth. So she had girl, and boy. Now, when you refer to a military general in Korean, it usually means a male. It doesn't mean a woman, right? Because it's much harder for women to lead alpha males. Much harder. Alpha males usually don't listen to women, right? So their whole family believed Father's word, and her mom believed Father's word, that they would have a general. And then this was in their heart for decades, because they had all the children and no sons. Only the son that was born was handicapped. He's mentally ill. Mentally handicapped because of brain damage. And so they're thinking, Father's prophecy was wrong. That's what they thought. And I remember the Queen gave a testimony about this. She said she felt like, Father made the prophecy over our family, but it was wrong. Right? And then somehow Father made her sing one time. And then he was talking to her, before she sang, this is my sister, my daughter-in-law, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. She is a lady general. That's what Father said. You see what I'm saying? So, now, Father, I don't know, if maybe Father remembered 20, 30 years back when he gave that prophecy. I don't know. You know how many people he was blessing? It's not like, you know what I mean? In the natural, he was blessing so many thousands of people. How in the natural could you remember every prophecy? But the Queen said in her testimony, when Father said that to her, she broke down. Because she realized, wow, God is faithful with his promise. And she didn't feel like a general at the time. She didn't know she would have to go through all this training. She was just beginning the training when Father went to the spirit world. She was just beginning. I was training with the UFC guys, and then I got her a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt, highest level in Korea, a girl who was training. And so the brown belt came, and she was just starting to train the queen, and then Father ascended. Right? So she was starting the training. She was starting training, but it was cut short in that time frame. But God gave her the blessing of becoming a general.